As the 100-year anniversary of the fire that destroyed the Gowanda Opera House in 1924 approaches, this is a look back at that Gowanda landmark building. As Gowanda prospered and grew in size, numerous commercial structures were built, and among them was an opera house to provide entertainment to the local inhabitants. This building was located just north of Main Street, behind a row of brick stores known as the Opera House block. The Opera House was built of wood, shown in yellow on the 1892 Sanborn map to the right, and contained a large, two-story space with a stage at its north end. Entrance to the Opera House was through a long narrow lobby between stores. This Sanborn map shows stores containing a bank, post office, drugstore, shoe store, and grocery store. The second floors contain doctor and dentist offices, a club room, and a Masonic hall. An article from August 15, 1884 reads, in part, "The scenery for the new opera house was finished last week, and is now ready to be put in place. It consists of 8 sets as follows: landscape, rock, 2 parlors, kitchen, garden, forest and street, all elegantly painted and mounted after the most approved plans. The drop curtain is a beauty. The painting is a mountain scene in Italy mounted in a gilt frame on a marble vase, on either side of which is a rich scarlet velvet curtain, with gold tassels and cords. This scenery is said to be the finest in any opera house outside of the large cities in western New York." Also from the same date, Mr. J. S. Torrance has sold a 1/2 interest in his new opera house to Mr. J. E. Van Dusen. The building is rapidly approaching completion, and we are informed that it is the intention of its owners to dedicate the edifice with a magnificent ball, sometime early in September. Opera House managers, Torrance and Van Dusen, later announced an opening date of September 10, 1884. That date was later pushed back to the 17th as additional time was needed to complete all of the necessary arrangements. The Opera House was to be a dual-use structure serving as a roller skating rink when not being used as a performance venue. So, special attention was given to this alternate function when the floor was being laid. As the opening date approached, the following description of the Opera House was published. The entrance is on Main Street adjoining the post office, and is of brick with red sandstone and terracotta trimmings surmounted by an exceedingly artistic oval cornice. The facade is reached underneath an archway and is open back for about 12 feet, and when complete will be very tasty and elaborate. The auditorium is reached by a hallway 10 feet wide running the full depth of the post office building. It is on a level with the street, and large, airy and beautiful. The extreme height to the ceiling is 40 feet, and the main floor is 76 by 90 feet, and will seat not less than 1,300 people. The ceiling is colored a hazy blue, and the walls are tinted in a rich cream color, frescoed with Tuscan red and pink. The proscenium is one of the striking features of the interior, being a Moorish design, in bronze, black and Pompeii red, making a rich foreground to the scenic effects of the stage. This latter is large, and hereafter no one will have occasion to complain of cramped quarters for the production of plays. Dressing rooms on either side open onto the stage, and underneath the stage is a large basement for storage, and for the disappearance when necessary of the dramatic or operatic Mephistopheles. One of the very satisfactory features of the place is the opportunity of exit in case of emergency. It is safe to say that the whole house could be emptied, if required, inside of 2 minutes. The accessory arrangements, such as ticket office, cloak rooms, etc., also leave nothing to be desired. In the background, you can hear Chimes of Normandy Overture, from an operetta by Planquette. This is just one of the musical numbers performed at the opening of the Gowanda Opera House. A September 19, 1884 article described the Opera House opening from 2 days previous. The new Opera House held its musical opening Wednesday evening, the attractions being Poppenberg's Complete Orchestra of Buffalo, assisted by Mademoiselle Maris Poppenberg, soprano, followed by a grand ball. The weather favored the managers, and by 9 o'clock a large audience had assembled, composed of a majority of our villagers, in addition to many invited guests from neighboring towns. The audience, as it entered, were greeted by a brilliantly lighted and decorated interior, the stage being set with a charming drawing room scene, and embellished with bouquets and choice flowering plants. The first night of skating came the following weekend and was announced as follows: the Opera House rink will open Saturday evening of this week. 3 fancy skaters, Mr. J.J. Coffey, Mr. W.R. Washburn, Mr. S.L. Stillman have been engaged for the occasion, and other attractions are being arranged. The best of music, skates and floors, will call out our pleasure-loving people, and every other evening hereafter during the season, when the Opera House is not otherwise in use, the rink will be the scene of jollity and fun, affording healthful recreation to everybody, and will be the great social resort of the village for all, old and young alike. A later article described the rink as the finest one outside of Buffalo in this vicinity. Over the years, the Opera House became an all-purpose social venue in Gowanda. In addition to being a place to see concerts and theatrical performances by many of the great actors and actresses of the time, the building saw not only grand balls, but also public gatherings of all kinds, including parties, dances, movies and political gatherings. Late in 1899, the Opera House passed into the possession of J.H. Smith. Under Smith's ownership, the building also housed a saloon and billiard room. The last manager of the Opera House was John W. Schatt. We close this part of the discussion of the Opera House with some excerpts from Schatt's obituary, published in the Gowanda News on December 9, 1937. John W. Schatt, prominent for a number of years in the industrial, theatrical, fraternal and social life of Gowanda, passed away at 5 o'clock on Wednesday morning, December 8, 1937, at the family residence, 106, Chestnut Street. Always interested in the theatrical business, Mr. Schatt came into possession of the Gowanda Opera House and operated roadshows and early movies there until the building and other property were destroyed by fire. When the site was acquired by Richard Wilhelm and the Hollywood was constructed, Mr. Schatt was the first manager of that splendid theater. We continue now with a discussion of the fire which ravaged the Opera House and a big chunk of the Gowanda business district into the early hours of Monday, October 27, 1924. The Gowanda Opera House was ground zero for a fire that ravaged much of the Gowanda business district on October 27, 1924. Several area newspapers reported on this major incident. Using the New York Historic Newspaper's website, articles were found in the following newspapers: Salamanca Inquirer, October 31, 1924. Cattaraugus Republican, October 29, 1924. The Wyoming County Herald, October 31, 1924. News of the fire reached as far as the far northeastern part of New York State, where it was mentioned in the Republican Journal. What follows is a composite of those articles. The fire started, apparently, in the projecting room of the Gowanda Opera House, where a motion picture show had been in progress until 11 o'clock. Philip Coco discovered the fire at 12:30 a.m. The Gowanda Fire Company was alerted around 1 o'clock Monday morning. While the exact origin of the fire is unknown, it is believed that it was caused by defective wiring in the moving picture projecting booth of the theater. John W. Schatt, owner of the building, was unable to assign a definite cause. The projection booth recently had been remodeled, he said, and all the electric wiring reinstalled. Damage from the fire was estimated at over $500,000 before it was checked 4 hours later by the combined efforts of multiple fire departments. 6 stores, the village opera house and post office, a bank, 2 club rooms and 7 residences were destroyed or badly damaged before the flames were brought under control. Starting in the theater, the fire spread so rapidly that for a time the whole village was threatened with destruction. Reportedly, Gowanda's volunteer fire-fighting force of 155 men was entirely inadequate to cope with the flames. Fire companies from Salamanca, Silver Creek, Springville, Collins Center and Little Valley, equipped with chemical engines and pumpers, arrived shortly after the fire got beyond control. The fire swept a block each way from the intersection of Main and Center Streets. The Salamanca Fire Department was called at 1:30 o'clock Monday morning, and Assistant Chief Andrew Leesky and Fireman Chapman made a 50-minute run with the pumper to the scene of the conflagration. The pumper kept a steady stream of water pouring over the fire for 4.5 hours. It was impossible to prevent the spread of the flames, store after store being added to the conflagration. Himmeline's department store, a 3-story building, was burned to the ground. Mr. Himmeline was formerly a resident of Delavan, where he was employed in R.C. Pingree's store, and from there went to Gowanda. From the Himmeline store the flames spread to that of the Arnold Drug Company, this building also being destroyed. The battle against the flames, which were sweeping along 2 streets, lasted from 1 a.m. until nearly 5 o'clock in the morning before the blaze was declared under control. The timely arrival of reinforcements from surrounding villages is credited with the saving of the remainder of the village. The firemen, although handicapped by darkness throughout most of the fight due to the burning of power lines, did not have to cope with any wind. A creek running through the village within 100 yards of the center of the fire furnished abundant water for the pumpers. No injuries, other than slight cuts and bruises received by firemen, in the course of the battle were reported. Sufficient warning was given for all occupants of the 7 business buildings, for residences and several apartments to make their way to safety. Chief of Police Elmer Westing, who occupied an apartment above the drugstore, lost all personal effects. The chief abandoned his work directing traffic for sufficient time to carry the police department's records to a place of safety. Samuel Key's bandbox hat shop was destroyed with loss of $15,000. A 2-story building of the Gowanda Savings and Loan Company was razed, but the association's funds and records, held in a fireproof vault, were not damaged. The loss to this property exceeded $35,000. In the upper floors of the building were the homes of Mrs. Jenny Dorsey and Mrs. John Schwetz. All their household goods were destroyed. 3 Center Street residences adjoining the business block were destroyed. They were the homes of Mrs. Jules Kerr, Dr. R.J. Tuttle and Fred Arnold. The Wilhelm apartments also were damaged, and several private garages were destroyed. Gully's drug store was burned to the ground. The Gowanda Club occupied quarters above the store, and its property was destroyed. Nagel and Wallace's men's clothing was damaged to the extent of more than $50,000, and the Mentley Hardware Company suffered mostly to smoke and water. The Grange Hall above the hardware store was damaged. The post office building was entirely destroyed. Mails were being sorted and deliveries made this morning from a garage temporarily taken over for the purpose. All stamps, records and other postal department property were believed to have been destroyed in a fire. The losses as estimated this morning were distributed mainly as follows. Himmeline Company, General Store, $80,000 stock. Richard Wilhelm, owner of the Himmeline Company building and fixtures of the post office building. Also burned, $90,000. C. W. Gully, druggist, $45,000, building and stock. Nagel and Wallace, clothing, $50,000, building and stock. Harold Arnold, druggist, $35,000, building and stock. John W. Schatt, owner of the Opera House, where the fire started, $80,000. Barton Mentley, hardware, $25,000, damage to stock and building. Gowanda Savings and Loan Association, $5,000 fixtures. H. G. Keyes, owner of Saving and Loan Association building, $30,000. Dr. Robert J. Tuttle, $15,000, residence. Mrs. Cora Kerr, $13,000, residence. Sam Keyes, hat shop, $10,000, stock and fixtures. Elmer Westing, $12,500, household effects. Mrs. John D. Zwetch, $3,000, household effects. Mrs. Jenny Dorsey, $1,500, household effects. Fred Arnold, $10,000, household effects. The Wilhelm Double Residence, $10,000. Gowanda Club, $5,000 fixtures. Grange Hall, $5,000.